Does anyone know what really happened to Beckwith, New Hampshire? I know that's a weird question, but I can't find it on Google anywhere. A few days ago I was hiking, not far from the Sandwich Mountain trailhead off Route 49, and I found a dingy copy of Goodnight Moon, a flashlight, and a journal in a plastic shopping bag near the trail. The book had a sticker inside the cover from Beckwith Public Library, which doesn't seem to exist. The journal was missing a decent number of pages, but it was in good enough shape to read. So I did. I did my best to type it out because well, you'll see. I live not too far from where I found the journal, and now, every time I hear the hush of wind through the leaves above, it gives me the creeps. November 14. I will never see another spring. Of that I am almost certain. For now the wind blows and rattles the window panes, and I sit beside the wood stove and listen to the crackle of burning logs and wait. David left 3 days ago with the children. I wouldn't have let him if I had the energy to fight, but I slept through his departure. He knew how little food we had left. I don't blame him for going, but I do blame him for staying gone. And I blame him for taking Isla and Max with him. He knows how dangerous the night has become, almost as dangerous as the day. Isla still thinks there are monsters in the closet, but I know there are monsters out there and I can't help her. Perhaps the past few weeks cooped up began to wear on him. I know they've worn on me. When Roger was screaming and Theo cried, when he looked to us for help we couldn't give, that was enough to run away from. And the day that David left, I caught him crying beside the drawn curtains of one of our bedroom windows. It seemed like it was probably a sunny day, but David knows better than to look. Initially I had wondered if it was the first time I had seen him cry. He was always so reserved, always such a strong parent when I wasn't. He's been strong throughout all of this too. If it weren't for him, Isla and Max would have only seen my fear. It would have been hard for me to convince them alone that the hiding game was actually a game. But now David is gone. My children are gone. And I am left to comfort Theo while his father sweats and moans on a sofa stained with blood. Roger still hasn't said how he lost so much of his leg. He barely says anything at all. But he did say one thing as David dragged him through our door. "It wasn't my wife. It wasn't Justine." Theo had cried, and David was strong enough for compassion. He told me that the food would last, that it would be enough for all of us. One thing I need most of all right now is his strength to tell the little lies he knows I won't believe. I'm hungry. Theo's stomach growls and I give him my meager portions and smoke instead to stave off the constant nag of slow starvation. I have most of a carton of Parliaments that David took from the Booker's place down the street. Maggie smoked, now she's dead. Lucky me, I guess. The day David left, it was the first time he'd cried in front of me. I remembered the first time last night. We had gone to see Gianni Schicchi at the Metropolitan Opera in New York. David said he'd rather go warm a bar stool somewhere instead, but I'd convinced him. It was an aria that did it, a beautiful voice dissolving a strong man in a moment of emotional purity. I can almost hear it now, the doleful melody. No, I can hear it. It's one of them, the creatures that looks like us. It's singing. Oh mio, babino, caro, mi piace, ibeo. They know our thoughts. I wonder if they feel my fear. November 15. Day 4 without them. It started to snow, and I hope they're warm. Theo slept with me last night and asked when his mother was coming back. I just hugged him. That was the only answer I could give. I don't know if I can do this without David. Theo needs someone who can reassure him in a way that I have lost the spirit to even pantomime. When Max was here, the two of them distracted each other. I watched them play in that way that only children can, oblivious to the strain around them. As much as I take heart from David's strength, I think the boys may have given me more. David is optimistic. He jokes and brushes off the ugliness of everything, but when I look closely, I can see the hairline cracks of fear in his facade. When the boys laugh, there's no subterfuge or patronizing comfort. They're just happy in spite of it all. They might be the only genuine piece of normalcy now. Fuck, I miss them. I miss Maxie's weird factoids. I need Isla's little fingers twizzling tangles into my hair. I need them, good or bad or laughing or crying, but here, with me. Not knowing if they're hurt or scared or hungry feels like knowing they're all of those things, but I have to be strong for Theo, someone else's child. How? He's scared, but with Roger's mangled leg wrapped in plastic and gauze and hidden beneath a blanket, it almost seems like he's just resting. That's what I tell Theo. His daddy's sick, so he needs to rest. But Roger's getting worse, even with David's attempt at cauterization. I light candles to mask the stench of decay and putrid flesh, but when I dress his wound, the smell always makes me gag. I've smelled it before. The smell of a junkie who stops moving and rots in the places rubbed raw by neglect. One day soon, he won't look like he's resting anymore. Even a child can recognize the wrongness of a corpse. I need my family. For now, I'll write an old prayer and hope he's listening. God, grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. November 17. Isla came back yesterday before dawn. She was alone, shivering in pink from the cold and carrying a shopping bag. I am trying to be happy, grateful that she kept all of her little fingers and toes out there. I am so grateful that she's alive, but I don't know what it means that David and Max haven't returned with her. I don't know how Isla got back either, or where she had been. I haven't asked her for details yet because I can still see the terror on her little face. I only asked her if everyone was okay. She said,
"Daddy had a boo-boo."
But she nodded. That was enough for the moment. She brought a half-empty vial of doxycycline HCI and syringes in her bag. I looked it up in a drug book. It's an antibiotic. For Roger, I guess. She also had 2 cans of beans. It's what we needed. Everything but the other missing pieces of my family. But Isla brought more than necessities. I don't know where David found it or if he sent it for Roger. I hope he did after what we went through. I hope he knows how much more difficult my struggle has become. I need him more than ever now, but he's gone somewhere and I can't talk to him. After our meal tonight, I have a little more than 1.5 cans of navy beans, 4 packs of cigarettes, and a balloon of heroin. Grant me the serenity for her. November 20. Last night, one of them sang a part of O Mio Babino Caro for hours outside our house. It sounded like a child's voice, but I couldn't bring myself to check. It was too unsettling to find one standing at the window when I opened the curtains. The one that sang had a sweet voice, but she sang the same 2 lines over and over. Mi strugo y mi tormento, o Dio, vorrei morir. It translates to, I am pinning, I am tormented. Oh God, I would want to die. They toy with us and I don't know why. I don't know why we're still alive either when so many others aren't. It's been 9 days since David left with my little boy. There are moments where I forget them and others where I wish I could. I'm a terrible mother, a terrible wife, and I don't know how to tell Theo that his father isn't resting anymore. The antibiotics weren't enough. Theo will notice when he wakes up and sees the empty sofa. I dragged Roger onto the porch. I don't have the strength to bury him. Now, we have 1 pack of cigarettes, half a can of beans, and a balloon of heroin I should have flushed, but haven't. I itch and my body twists because I know how easy serenity would come. I hate David for what he's done to us. Isla and Theo need a mother. They need strength. I just need. November 21st. David would have buried Roger in the night instead of letting the frost suffice as a shroud. But we are different people. He would have given a eulogy, something hopeful and poignant so Theo could see that others knew and loved his father too. I told Theo that Roger went for help, that he got better all of a sudden. What the fuck is wrong with me? Soon enough, if David doesn't return, I'll have to tell him that both of his parents are dead. I dread the questions that news might bring. Most of all, will I die too? Should I lie to him? As I'm writing this, Theo and Isla are on the floor next to me. Theo's trying to teach Isla how to play Uno as I fill the air with smoke that sometimes makes them cough. I'm down to 9 cigarettes after this one. We won't have food for dinner tonight, and without David or Roger here, I'm the only one responsible. My fault, my failure at motherhood. Theo taught Isla about wild cards in their game, and now he thinks every card can change the color. Sometimes she asks me which color I'd like. She smiles meekly, trying to break through my clenching muscles and gritting teeth, but the only colors I can bring to my mind are powder brown, teaspoon silver, and bubbling bronze. I settle on blue most times, the color of a raised vein, and then I look to the kitchen where I hid my temptation away. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Roger was a good man, a cardiologist, a husband to a wife who rarely griped, and a father to a son who makes my daughter laugh. He collected rocks, geodes, and minerals and things that he dug from the earth on vacations. He was intelligent, well-read, but he never made a show of it. He would deflect praise with self-deprecating jokes that almost always fell flat. He knew how to humanize his intellect. He was our neighbor. Tomorrow night I will try to dig a hole for him. Tonight, I'll look for food while the children are asleep. If I don't make it back, I have to make it back. November 23rd. Today is Thanksgiving, and I am cooking rice and meat that I found the night before last. We had salted rice for breakfast again. Isla balked at it. She pouted, but Theo seems to understand that rice is all we have. He accepted it, and she followed his lead while shying away from me at the table. I suppose I can accept being her bad guy as long as she's eating. Theo continues to smile in spite of everything. A waiter's smile, though, dropping the moment he thinks Isla and I aren't looking. It's clever for a 10-year-old. I wonder if he doesn't share his father's smarts. If he knows that his parents are dead, he hasn't said so. He's a good kid, too good for the meal I'm preparing. But I didn't find much rice, and he and Isla both need protein. I'm out of cigarettes. I need it too. November 26. Isla is fine. She's fine. She has to be. I saw David last night. He came back, but it wasn't him. They took him, which means Max is I don't think I can do this. Isla is hiding and cackling again. She sings the song when they do, but she doesn't know the words, so she just shrieks along. Theo's afraid of her. I had to hide the knives, but she's only 4. My little girl. And I don't know if this is a symptom of something normal or abnormal or worse. I feel so alone. Theo's gotten curious about this journal. I'm not his mother, and I think the strangeness of my presence had started to set in for him. I'll have to tell him soon about Roger. He deserves the truth, but I am struggling to be good and alive at the same time. For now, my goodness is wrapped up in fighting the urge to use. My skin crawls and my hands shake, and I pace around in a frenzy looking for cigarettes I might have stashed away and forgotten. But I know what will happen if I use. I'll come down from my moment of oblivion and find an open door and an empty house, and it will be my fault. I don't know what the creatures are. What do they want? When does it end? Isla calls them the Hushers. I think she remembers more about her time away with David than she's willing to tell me. She started shrieking again. I just want to help my little girl, but I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. November 27. I have been sober for 5 years and 3 months. I had been. Isla crashed last night, and after Theo went down, I went into the bathroom and tied off a vein. I'm a bad mother, I know that, but I'm still a mother. The front door stayed closed and Isla is still sleeping. Theo is reading Harry Potter, the second one, I think. And for now, I feel okay. Tomorrow, I'll feel okay, and the next day after, I don't have enough dope for it to be a problem. I'll be fine. I'm sorry, I shouldn't lie. I got blood on some of my pages yesterday, and I couldn't stand the sight of the puckered down brown edges, so I ripped them out. It made me think about this book and why I'm still writing all of this. It started with my sponsor years ago. She wanted me to write when I was having hard times with the kids and with life. I guess it became a habit. Aline would have laughed at that. Now, I wonder if this book will be the part of me that survives. If it is, then I should be honest. One of the exercises Aline made me do was writing truths, an easy one and a hard one. Addicts lie. The first step to recovery is breaking that down. The lies we tell ourselves, the excuses and the promises left to be fulfilled tomorrow. She told me to be honest even if it hurts, so here goes. Easy. The moment I saw that gear bag, when I knew what it was, I knew I was going to use. I didn't flush the dope because I wanted it. Hard. There is a part of me that doesn't want Isla to wake up. Hard. I know David left to look for food, but I think he took the kids because he didn't trust me to be a parent without him. Hard. Our meat didn't come from a house. It came from our porch. Easy. I used again this morning. It won't be the last time. If I have the energy tomorrow, I'll write about the beginning. The pages where I talked about it are gone now. I didn't want to look at Roger's blood every time I tried to write. I don't want to think about what I've done to keep the kids alive. November 28. I was holding Isla when she finally woke up last night. I was running my fingers through her hair, so dirty now, like greasy silk. She had Roger's blood on her chin. I don't know how long it's been there, and every little defect about her makes me feel like a failure. When she opened her eyes, she smiled up at me and blinked away her sleep.
Mommy?
She breathed the word with the softness of a lazy Saturday afternoon. Then,
Where did you put the knives?
she finished the thought just as sweetly, and I felt nauseated. She's my little girl, she's supposed to be, but she left, and now that she's back, every time I look at her, she seems different, wrong. She's playing with a doll right now, telling it to be quiet and making it sneak around the legs of the tables. If I interrupt her, she shrieks and screams the melody of the song. She gets violent, so I just let her play her unsettling little game. Theo has been up in Max's room since I told him his father was dead. I won't tell him about the meat. There's some truths that even the best version of me is incapable of saying aloud. Oh, and yesterday I said I'd try to write about the beginning, but I'm tired. Tomorrow, perhaps. November 29/October 17. It began with a brunch we were hosting at our house that had bled into afternoon drinks. Tess and Leo Salinger were over and we had the curtains drawn downstairs, but I can't remember why. Something David was planning. Around 1 o'clock, I got a text message from Diana, a friend of mine who lives down on Cobb Street. It just said, "Don't look outside." I mentioned it aloud and Leo took it as an invitation. He was a few mimosas past tipsy, and if he hadn't done it, I might have. It was just a peek, but he seemed strangely enamored by what he saw. He said something about the pretty tulips and then turned back to us smiling, with his nose suddenly gushing blood. Tess was the next to look. David went to get Leo a towel, but in the few seconds it took him, Leo's smile dropped and his eyes widened. I've never seen such exaggerated terror as I did when he began to scream. Tess joined a few moments later. Their screaming woke up Isla from her nap and I tried to keep her upstairs. David said afterward that I probably spared her years of nightmares, that both of the Salingers were vomiting blood and choking intermittently as they inhaled to scream more. David was strong though. He handled what he saw with a fortitude I still cannot fathom. He was also the one that called Roger to warn him. Max was playing with Theo. David's warning was nowhere near as intriguing as Diana's.
The Salingers just bled to death in our living room because they looked outside. Get the boys the fuck away from the windows. If anyone looks, you'll die.
Something like that. I don't know if what he said was accurate, but the way they died, no one would risk it. I do think David saved our son that day. I believe that. And then he took him to his death. I still haven't seen Max. I don't know if I can handle that. The Hushers wear our skins, I think. The first one I saw hadn't put its on correctly. The face was twisted a bit and the eye holes didn't line up with the eyes beneath. It was a boy's skin, one not much older than Isla. He seemed familiar, but I don't think he was a child from our neighborhood. Beckwith is a small town, close-knit to the degree that anywhere is these days. It's about 4 miles north of Squam Lake in central New Hampshire, and if my mother can be believed, it was founded in 1860 by a grandfather of mine, several greats back. It's always been a quiet town, nestled away in the white pines and paper birches that run along Drake's Brook near Route 49. We know each other here. It's impossible not to with a population just shy of 500. So whenever a person dies, we feel it. Or we used to. I used to. Now, I've become numb. Also, Isla found the knives. There's a chef's knife missing. And when I asked her about it, she screamed and told me that I should be dead. Now she's reading Goodnight Moon like a perfectly normal child, but Theo is still avoiding us except for when it's time to eat. I can't blame him. We're falling apart, each of us becoming monstrous in our own way. I have 0 cigarettes, 2 cars that stopped working on October 17th, and a house that hides us from daylight. I have heroin. I have Isla. I have several pounds of meat and a wood stove on which to cook it. I have life, but it's been so long since I've felt alive. God granted me the wisdom to know the difference, and I hate him for that. December 3rd. I think I'm going insane. Or I know I am, but I don't know how insane I've gone. How does someone judge such a thing for themselves? Fuck. The past few days have been difficult. Isla has been hiding and leaving drawings for me to find. They're all the same, pictures of dead people in a forest and the words "Good night, nobody." It's a phrase from Goodnight Moon, one that I've always found unsettling in its ambiguity, but now I think I've begun to understand it. The night is our time to scavenge. It has been since Justine, Theo's mom, showed up at our front door on the night of October 17th. She made a mistake and looked outside after sundown and didn't bleed or scream like the Salingers did. That's when we began to guess that daylight was dangerous and nighttime was safe, but we were never safe. The Hushers were just watching from the darkness and waiting. When the power died, the cell service went down. A group from 2 streets over set out for Waterville Valley. It's a ski resort town nearby. It should have been a short walk, but no one came back. We went through food too quickly. When we began to run low, we realized that some houses, the ones that were empty, didn't have food at all. David suspected people were hoarding, but now, I'm not so sure. 2 nights ago, I went to look for food again. For something other than meat I have to warm with my body in order to cut. What I found was a number of hollow homes. They weren't just missing food, they were missing furniture, pictures, walls. The Booker's house was just an open space inside, as though something had taken everything but the external structure. It used to be 2 stories. It used to have hardwood floors, but now there's only emptiness and an expanse of frozen soil. It can't be real, can it? Our home isn't much better. It's far too full in comparison. Too many places for Isla to hide. I'm frightened to find her drawings now. Whenever I do, she pops out, screeches, runs at me, and slams her fist into my body. It's not a punch, it's a stab. Practice for the day she decides to try it with the knife. She's my little girl. I used to push her on the swingset in the back until she learned to pump her legs. I used to hold her hand as we walked to the mom and pop store. I used to love her, but now that love will end with blood. She is one of them. I know she is. Theo knows it too, and we're terrified. But I won't kill my little girl, so I'll wait for the blade and pray I've got a fix in me when it finally comes. Nobody grant me the serenity of a quick death, and don't let Theo suffer when I'm gone. December 4. There's nothing in the silence but the beating of your heart, and a fear is just an echo of that rhythm in the dark. The monsters never come around, the closet's far too tight, and we will always be here if you call us in the night. David used to recite that to Isla each night. He recited it to Max before her. He wrote it. A small comfort from a loving father, a strong man who once upon a time wrote poetry for me as well. The hushers are standing in a circle around the house, dozens of them. I recognize about half of the faces. My neighbors, mothers and fathers and children, people I knew. I don't know what they want, but I finally understand why Isla called them hushers. They all screamed when I first looked outside, gaping mouths and knitted brows, but the sound that emerged was shh. I could hear it through the window, an impossible sound for an open mouth to make. David was among them. His quieting scream twisted in an expression of fear and pain. The strong man I knew is dead, and I am lost in a familiar place with only the memory of a bedtime poem to comfort me. December 6. I have enough heroin in the bag for 3 or 4 more days. It's enough to go to sleep and not wake up, but it doesn't make me brave. And bravery is what I need most of all right now. The bravery to find a vein on Theo so that he won't be alone when I'm gone. I have spent the past week cowering in the voice of my daughter, searching the shadows for movement as I meander her quiet house. At first, I didn't want her to have to suffer through all of this, filling her belly with the flesh of a man who held her as a baby, feeling the fear that stalks behind a mother who lives in terror and sorrow. I didn't want to watch her wither from hunger. I didn't want to hold her as she died, but she died weeks ago. She died the same way the rest did, quietly consumed and digested and regurgitated as an avatar of torment. I need that to be the truth. Easy. Isla was a beautiful, funny, loving little person. Easy. Isla made me want to be good because she was perfect. Hard. Yesterday I watched Isla sneaking around the living room as Theo read his book on the sofa where Roger died. Theo seemed nervous, wary, constantly looking up from his pages and listening for the sounds of little feet. It happened quickly. Isla was slithering across the floor on her belly. She grabbed Theo's ankle as it dangled over the sofa's edge. She said,
"Good night, Nobot."
Isla didn't take the knife. Theo did. All I saw was a flash of steel. All I heard was Theo's shriek. I was right there, so close, but fettered by my blanket of lingering numbness. It happened so quickly. There was so much blood, and Isla didn't make a sound. She wasn't my daughter. 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 Sometimes I wonder if I am even me. December 7th. I had to choose. My heart is break. This will be my final. We are small in a world that lets us believe in our own importance. We clear the land and paint it as a portrait of ourselves and think that we are artists of humanity's potential. We build our houses grand and fill them with prosperous people and coveted icons of our thin vanity. We think that we are united, the pinnacle of God's creation. We are nothing. Tonight it snowed and I fetched a shovel from the garage to bury my daughter's replacement in a shallow grave out back. The hushers snuck along the boxwoods and peered around the trunks of trees, and I screamed at them. They watched my rage with the impressive silence of the dead. They watched as my shovel bit the earth and scattered snow. They watched my breath cloud the air, oblivious to the sting in my lungs and the thump in my chest. They watched as my muscles quit and I resigned myself to a half-complete task. A grave, an abrasion on the frozen ground, the best I could muster. The swings creaked their ghostly movement, a reminder of summers past, and laughter hushed away into bitter memory. I wrapped Isla in a blanket as Theo wept and apologized again and again. He was afraid. He told me how his father fought the night they arrived at our door. He told me how Roger screamed as a husher that looked like Justine tore open his leg with her bare hands and left him. He told me how the blood steamed and how he did nothing. I told him he survived, and he asked me, "What for?" He's a smart kid. I wish he wasn't, but he was smart enough to stay inside as I carried Isla out. His house is no longer hollow. It's gone. They're all gone. Only ours remains. Good night, nobody. a warning of what was coming. I carried my bundle of blankets out back. The frost crunched beneath my feet, and then I heard it, creaking, gulping, and shh. The body fell from my arms and I ran forward. I was wrong. The hushers didn't borrow the skin of the dead. Their Isla was wrapped in cloth. My Isla kicked and struggled before an audience of watchful, quiet eyes. They had cut the ropes of our swing set, looped them, knotted them, and left me with a heartbreaking choice. Isla dangled from a makeshift noose, and beside her, Max grasped at the loop around his throat. They kept my children alive, so I could choose which would die. And I did choose. I grabbed Isla's legs, I held her up and watched the helpless fear settle into Max's face. I fumbled with the rope around Isla's neck and screamed for Theo to bring the knife. Isla dragged in little breaths and I watched my son stop struggling. Theo came a few moments later, hesitant in wide-eyed terror as the hushers rushed. He was brave though. He brought the knife. I cut her down. The hushing stopped. And as I cut down Max, they all retreated into the trees. Isla was alive. I made a choice and Max's body lay still as I pressed his chest and begged to God a false serenity for a miracle that didn't come. There is no God in this place, and if there is, we are too quiet now for him to hear us. I chose to survive for my family, and I chose to survive because survival is written in our bones. But I chose wrong. I chose my little girl because I had killed her in my mind 12 times and saving her felt like redemption. But I chose wrong. I held her and she stared into my eyes and spoke.
So long ago the forest wept. You swung the axe, our kin you kept. Upon our graves your saplings slept. But now we have our due, and the forest grows anew.
It wasn't her voice. The Isla I saved was one of them. I chose wrong. Their Isla stood, sneered, and opened its mouth once more.
Good night, nobody.
They know our thoughts. They know what will hurt, what pain a needle in a vein cannot erase. They know because they were here before us. They have seen us build and live our short little lives. They are the forest's vengeance, I think. A falling tree to crush the man that swings the axe. According to my mother, my ancestor was such a man. Perhaps I have just inherited a grudge that slowly grew and witnessed our lack of remorse. They know us. All I know now are hard truths. Hard. I was so wrong about everything. I found a blood-stained note in Max's pocket written in David's hand.
Maxie, keep your sister safe. Get her home. Make sure your mom gets the bag. You've been so brave these past few days, but now you need to be brave for your family. Remember what I've taught you in Isla. Keep quiet. Make sure the hushers don't see you. If you hear your sister scream, help. When you're scared, hide. When you're not, stab quickly and run fast. The little bag with the zipper is for mommy, but don't give it to her unless you end up outside and the sun is coming. It's medicine and she knows how to use it, but she'll lose it if she's not in an emergency. And don't come looking for me. Don't. I'll find my way back when I get better. I love you, kiddo. I love all of you so much, but you need to be brave and you need to be strong. For me and for them. Dad.
December 8. I am writing by the light of a burning house. Up higher for the children I lacked the strength to bury. Theo is sitting next to me, watching the flames warm the bare branches above, and all around us the hush is muted by the crackle of timbers. The sofa was missing last night when I carried Isla's body back inside, as was the dining table and 12 other small things that masquerade in making a house a home. I didn't want to wait for the walls to go, so I made a decision. It's no longer a home without them, and there is nothing for me here but the memory of death painted thickly over the rest. So when the fire dies, Theo and I will pick a direction and walk. The hushers might follow, but I do not fear them now. How can I when the life they would take from me burns in the fire before me? I am now only a vessel for my family. So long as I breathe life into them. I am my home now, a human memory of a little girl who drew fascinated creatures in garish, beautiful colors and a boy who knew the names of all of Saturn's moons. I am a memory of a man who wrote poems and watched baseball and read bedtime stories in silly voices. I found a poem of David's behind a dresser that vanished while we slept last night. Nourish me without a thought for taste, for I have ruined my palate by your side, souped on summer days, forgotten haste, and sipping liquid movements of your stride. He wrote it for me, before the kids and before the dope, when we were young and he didn't have to be strong for me or anyone else. I loved him and he loved us, so that is how I will remember him. Even if his copy stalks and hushes and tears the flesh from me, I will remember whose face I knew first. It's almost time to go. The fire is less savage and more restless, and I am feeling the same. I'm only bringing the essentials. I have a flashlight, this journal, a bedtime story, and 2 lethal doses of heroin drawn and ready. If we don't make it to shelter by dawn, at least we can go softly. Afterward. Hey, I'm thinking about going back out there today. I didn't see any syringes, but that doesn't mean they're not there. Luckily, I left a geotag 43.9298153 and -71.4934310. We'll see.